Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Explode Your Expert Business Show. Today, I'm here with the amazing Susan Armstrong. How you doing, Susan?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you, Simone?
I am incredibly well. Thank you very much. I love your setting. Guys, if you're listening on the podcast, you can go on YouTube and watch the video because something that Susan does, which I love, is she has a little passion. Can you talk about your passion before we go into how can we break through from our prisons, how we create our prisons?
Well, actually, I don't know if it's that much different, Simone, if it's actually a story within Escape Your Invisible Prison.
Let's
But
start with that then.
I design clothing and I make my own clothing. So I've been doing this since I was 9 years old. And had times have been different back then, I probably would have been a fashion designer instead of an author and a speaker and a trainer.
So what made you start? Where did this passion come from of designing clothes? Do you remember, or it
Yeah,
just
yeah, absolutely. I remember clearly. I was 9 years old and I was hand making clothes for my Barbie dolls.
wow?
And my neighbor had a sewing machine and she said, let me help you, let me show you. And that started it. So I made all my own clothes in high school. I made my own handbags and then I gave it up about 25 years ago. I gave it up and I was looking for a hobby earlier this year and I thought, oh, silly me. I have a passion that I absolutely love. So when I travel around the world, then not only do I get to work, but I get to scour all the local fabric marts for exotic fabric. And this came from Italy.
That's absolutely beautiful. In fact, one of the things that I remember from our first conversation is where you mentioned, well, I and make all my own clothes when every time I'm on stage and
Yeah.
speak, and I was like, wow, that's definitely a way to stand out.
Okay. But I don't tell people that. I only told you that.
Yeah, yeah, well, now everyone knows.
Now you've told
Now I
everybody.
told everyone. Oh,
But
damn
now there's an expectation. I better finish this dress.
it. No pressure, no pressure. So you mentioned
Um,
that also the topic of making your own clothes is related to escaping from your own prison. What did you mean about that?
well, the I think there's a lot of people when I say escape your invisible prison, there's immediate recognition. They think, oh yeah, because they know exactly what I mean.
Mm.
So I have been doing this since I was 9 years old. But here's the thing. When I was 9, 10, 11, 12, I would wear all my clothes to school.
Hmm.
And then at some point, I was still designing the clothes and making them, but I wouldn't wear them because in my mind, they weren't good enough.
Mm.
So this was part of that invisible prison that I always talk about,
Yeah,
and that I was not sharing my things with the world. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't feel
I see.
like the clothes were good enough. Does that make sense?
It makes that perfect sense. It
Yeah.
makes perfect sense.
So, I mean, even before I recognized what I was doing, and this is why I talk and I write on the topic because, you know, we keep ourselves from being successful. We are the ones that stand in our way. It's got nothing to do with what's happening outside of us. Otherwise, how do you explain that my business has constantly gone up, even during what, three recessions?
So you mentioned, in fact, this is something I want to talk about. Your business and your success and your career that you had and that you're still having. And before we go into that, I know a bit about your story
Yeah.
and a bit about your background. Can you expand a bit more about, so what was your journey to be where you are right now? So we can tap into this. I think a
Okay.
lot of people will find it
Yeah.
very incredibly inspirational.
All right.
Personally,
Well,
I found it very inspirational.
we don't have time to go into it very deeply, so I'll
Hmm.
give you the shortened version.
Yes.
Um, when I was about, well, no, when I was 10, I remember consciously sitting in my bed. I consciously remember making this decision that, I had tried so hard up to that point to be perfect, to be
Hmm.
all things to all people, to make people happy, to do what I thought I was supposed to do. And apparently I was failing. I wasn't doing very well in my mind. And so I said, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to try anymore. And I started drinking, and, to numb the pain of not being good enough and not feeling like I fit in and always feeling so different. I started drinking to numb the pain. And when you're 11 years old and you want alcohol, there's only one place to get it, and that's on the street.
Yeah.
And so that started a life on the street. I think probably by the time I was 14, I was a drug addict. I don't know exactly, but by the time I was 14, definitely I was a drug addict. And so, like I said, at that age, if you want that stuff, there's only one place to find it, and that's
Absolutely.
not among nice people. It's among not nice people. So I spent years in street gangs, graduated to a motorcycle gang. I was property of a motorcycle gang, not the nice kind, the FBI most wanted kind. And of course, along with living on the street and the motorcycle gang, went years of all kinds of abuse. And eventually I managed to escape the motorcycle gang and was homeless for a while. And then got the courage to call my father, who took me in. Only, it's an amazing thing, our minds, the invisible prison that we keep ourselves in. So I had this vision that I was flying home. I had escaped the gang. I should be dead. I knew this. And it's a very long story, but I escaped the gang. I was flying home. I had these visions in my head that my parents would be waiting for me at the airport, all happy, open arms. Everything was going to be wonderful. And in fact, it wasn't. I didn't have the gang anymore abusing me, so I did it to myself. And I spent 2 years actively trying to kill myself, actively trying to end my own life. And, well, apparently I was a failure at that too. So, yeah. So that didn't help much. And one day I was laying on the sofa, and I used to talk to the ceiling, and I didn't know who I was talking to, but I just didn't have any reason for why I was still alive. I once took a handful of Valium and drank a half a case of beer, so 12 beers and a handful of Valium. And I'm not very big. I'm not very big. And I was smaller then. And I woke up the next day, and I did not know why. I would go out and drink and do drugs, and I remember feeling like my heart was going to explode in my chest, and I'd get scared and think, oh my God, I'm going to die. And then I'd think, oh yeah, this is good, because nobody would be surprised. This is what was expected, the way I lived my life. And it just didn't happen. And one day I woke up, and the thought occurred to me that I was going to die. I knew this. I was going to die, and I was okay with that. And I thought, okay, so I either go on the way I'm going, and I will die in a gutter somewhere, or I can try. I can fight and try. I'm probably going to die anyway, because when you have a story like mine, and you've been homeless and lived on the street, and being property of a motorcycle gang like that is very much like a cult.
Yeah.
So the thinking is really, you're indoctrinated into this. I thought, if I talk to normal people, they're going to throw rotten fruit at me, or they're going to put me in jail. But, something terrible is going to happen. So I was going to die either way. I was sure. So it was either just lay down and die, or die fighting. And I chose to die fighting. So that is how it actually all started. And through a series of miracles that we don't have time for me to explain, I ended up in recovery in California. And I got there, and they were all very lovely dentists and doctors and bank managers. They were all men, and there was me. And so once again, I didn't fit in and was scared to say anything, because I didn't understand what their lives were like. Mine was so completely different. And I decided to escape, because clearly I had tried and it wasn't going to work. And I was going to hitchhike to the gang back across the country, and I knew they would kill me. And I was okay with that, because probably how it was supposed to end anyway. And my escape didn't work. That night I went to a meeting, and I won for the very first time in my life. I still get goosebumps. I actually made a video about this because I still get goosebumps. I won a book, and it doesn't sound like much, but I'd never won anything in my life. And it was on the day I decided that I was going to escape. And that started the shift. You know, I remember clutching this book, and whoever it was I was talking to in the ceiling, I remember looking up at the ceiling and saying, "You're not going to let me go even if I want to, are you?" And I actually heard a voice. And it said, "No, Sue, we're not." And you know, when you die, they say that your life flashes in front of your eyes. Okay, well, mine did. But what flashed in front of my eyes were all of the times that I should have died, and I didn't.
Right.
And I recognized in that moment that maybe I was never supposed to die, that maybe there was something else I was supposed to do. That set me on this path, and that's how I ended up here, because I decided that, first of all, I had to fix everything that was wrong with me, and I was going to fix that and find out why they had, you know, whoever had saved my life. And
no, it makes me think, and thank you very much for being so open and sharing, Sue, because I mean, I've been on the street for 6 months, and I'm like, and that was tough. And when I heard your story, and I didn't know in so much details, that's also why I wanted to have this interview, so I could get to know you better in that way. But I was like, wow, like if my 6 months were tough and I could go back whenever I wanted, then it puts a lot of things in perspective. And I think that everyone who is listening now is maybe thinking about all the small times where we made a small problem a really big problem. And sometimes we meet someone that actually had some really big problem, and now makes our problems pretty small. And
but Simone, I need to say something about this, because what I recognize, and being on the street as a man, it's hard. I mean, I've been there, but imagine being there as a woman. So, you know, there's a lot that goes along with it. Even worse.
I cannot even, my mind cannot even go there.
Here's what I want everyone to know, okay? I get that when you look at me today, it's impossible. People can't make the link between the story I just told and who I am. It's because I've done a lot of work. But I also want everyone to know that while you don't have my story, you know, what happened to me, what the choices that I made, where I ended up, it's unique, and you don't have my story. But I guarantee you, the feelings are the same.
Yes.
The feelings and the thoughts are the same, regardless of the situation.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, everything can be big or small just compared to our own life. And so I want to do now, right now, you have an incredibly successful career, traveling all over the world, teaching, training corporations, which actually, this got to be part, you don't know it yet, but I'm going to book you for a second round of interview.
Oh, okay.
when we're going to talk about the corporate training market and making training experiential, because I'm really passionate about that topic. It's going to be a great conversation there. But that's not what we are going to be talking today. What I want to know today is what was the biggest thing for you that made that shift sustainable? The reason why I'm saying sustainable, it is because sometimes, you know, we try something and then doesn't work, and we try something else and that doesn't work. We try something else and that doesn't work. So was that one thing for you that made the biggest difference in terms of your transition? Was it multiple small things? How did it happen for you?
There was multiple things. So I consider myself to be a very lucky person. Okay, if I didn't change, I was going to die. So I knew what was wrong with my thinking. I knew I had a problem with my thinking, and I knew that had to change, because if it didn't, I would stay where I was and I would die. And so for me, I consider myself to be very lucky, because I didn't have to learn these things as a way to grow. My life wasn't okay. I was addicted, badly abused, you know, I had all these things that I had to recover from. So when I learned these things, for me, it was different, because I was saving my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Versus, let's say you, right? You say, oh, I need to stop being such a perfectionist. But there's actually nothing wrong with the way you really are. So it's easier to slip back, isn't it, when you don't have
It's such a
that.
strong motive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I have a very good friend who is a psychologist that works around the world. And she always tells me, and I think it's so true, gravity pull to the familiar is really strong. Meaning, why it's so difficult for us to change is because our habits are so powerful that it takes energy, effort, and time to build a new habit to replace the old one.
Yeah.
And most of us try something once or twice and we say, oh, well, that doesn't work. And we throw it out and go try something different when in fact, we don't really know if it's going to work or not. We haven't stuck with it long enough.
So if someone wants to change, now you have a lot of people here that they are or starting their businesses, so they might be scared and there are all their fears of doing something new, maybe leaving a safe and secure job that they have and just to get out there and try their own fortune in their own business.
Right.
And then you have other people that have been running their businesses for a long time, and now they are maybe struggling because their business is growing, is expanding, or maybe they are still running the business that they used to, while now they need to step into a different version of themselves in order to expand the business. I mean, I found that the key for my business to grow is for myself to grow as a person. And I found that everything that was stopping my business was actually a thing within me that I needed to change or I needed to improve. So if we want to change, what do you recommend? Where can we start? What steps can we take?
Okay, so this is what you say is very true. So the other thing I'd like to point out that, I've been both. I have had to start this business and I've been doing this for a long time, over 20 years now.
Yeah.
But here's what everybody, and again, I go back to the feelings are the same. Whether you're just starting out or whether you've been in business for a while and you're looking at growing, there's still fear there, right? So the feelings, again, are still the same, right? So there's still that fear there. So the biggest, if I have to distill it down to the biggest secret, and I don't think it should be a secret. I think everyone in the world, I wish I had a little USB drive and I could stick it in everybody's ear and this knowledge would just like go through everybody. So it was something they didn't have to think about, that they just operated on this principle. This would be the principle. And it's a condition of being human is what I call it. And that condition of being human is that we are the center of our own universe. Anybody with children knows this. You watch your children. They believe they are the only ones in the entire world, right? That the entire world revolves around them. Well, we don't change. And it's not a switch that we turn off and on. It's just always operating in us. That our view of the world, how we were raised, who we are, man or woman, how old are we, anything anyone has ever said to us or done to us in our lives, all the experiences that we have shape this view of the world. Now, because we've only ever had our experiences, we believe our view of the world is the one and only view of the world.
Yep.
And then we operate in life as if this view of the world is true. Okay? And we operate as if everyone else sees the world the same way we do. So why I call it the invisible prison, and I'll take myself as an example. Okay? So my lifelong battle will always be self-esteem. Okay? Feeling good enough. Feeling like I'm good enough. We all have baggage. Okay?
Yeah.
Basically, it distills down to one of three things. Mine happens to be good enough, worthy.
Yes.
So I told you about the dresses. So basically, here's the simple explanation of what happened. I don't feel good enough. I was raised by a perfectionist mother, so nothing I ever did was good enough. Okay, so I got the message really early on that I wasn't good enough. So I'd make all these clothes, but I didn't feel like I was good enough. So when I looked at the clothes, they weren't perfect. They weren't good enough. I saw the stitch that was missed. I saw the seam that was slightly uneven. So in my view, these weren't good enough. Everybody else would look at these clothes and say, what, are you crazy? These are beautiful. But I didn't see it. Does
Yeah.
this make sense?
Makes
So
sense.
now I want to take this a little bit farther, okay?
Hmm.
It's a very simple example. So I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not perfect enough. I walk around, and the way our brains work, we will always find evidence of what we believe. It's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is why I say that for most of us, if we are not successful, like you said, we have to go and look in the mirror.
Yep.
Because if I believe I'm not good enough and I go to a job interview, but in my mind, I'm not good enough. I don't have the right skills. I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I don't have enough experience, or, I live too far away, or they're not going to hire somebody like me. And I go to the job interview. What is going to happen in that interview with those beliefs running through my head? I'm going to be, I think I can, like, you can see who's going to hire somebody who doesn't have the confidence to be able to talk. And so I don't get the job, and it supports my belief that I'm not good enough. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
So if there is one secret, I learned that my view of the world is just that, my view. And I also learned that what I believed to be true wasn't actually true out in reality, that it wasn't actually a fact. So I often tell people, write down, what are the beliefs you have about yourself? And then go through your day and watch for the evidence where that isn't true. Because your mind is wired to go to the negative. Okay, it's just, like I said, human nature. It's just
survival
Yeah,
mechanism.
That's it. I'm saying you've got to circumvent that survival mechanism, because if you believe you're not good enough, you're just a housewife, you don't know how to run a business, you're not ever going to make any money, you're bad at marketing, you're collecting all the evidence to support that belief. But if you change that belief around, then you will find evidence to support the positive belief, and that's where you're going to find change. So I learned a long time ago, whatever anybody says or does, got nothing to do with me. It has to do with them. And I stopped taking it on.
So just to give a recap here, the first step, which is the most important at the beginning, is to acknowledge that I need to look at myself. I cannot expect other people to change. I cannot expect to influence other people's view of the world, or to change other people's view of the world. They are them. They have their life. They got their stuff to sort out. But what they are doing is putting their stuff and their view of the world on us. And so it's our responsibility to then look at us and see, where is this coming from? Is it coming from me? Is it coming from them? Is it true? Is it not true? What do I want to be true about myself? So now the question that comes to me is that people say, okay, now so I take a responsibility and I do the first step and I acknowledge that. I write down my beliefs. I look for evidence. How can I make this process sustainable? Because I found that a lot of people, they keep going to personal development seminars, business seminars, they write down their beliefs, they start doing it, and then somewhere along the line, things, they go back to what's familiar. And I found that from my personal experience, I always have this kind of fight in my mind every time I catch myself having a belief that I don't want to have or is not serving me, and I catch it. It's like, okay, I'm aware of it now. And then there is this period where there is this huge fight where everything I'm saying to replace it, it feels like, oh, this is just bullshit, doesn't work. So how can we make this process sustainable?
Okay, so the process, obviously, I'm sitting here in front of you, as you said, as a successful global business person.
So it works. It gives us hope.
Yeah, this is my point, right? Yes, this is my point. If I can recover from all that crap, the perfectionism, the people pleasing, all of that, the not good enough, really, we have no excuse, folks. We just have no excuse. Except to stick with it. So I can give you a number of different practices that I use and I recommend to people all the time. But as you said, the point is, you need to take action. And I'm really sorry to say this, okay, but I'm going to say it because I think it's really important. There isn't a magic pill. There is no one workshop. There is no one magic mantra that is going to change your life in a second. Your life will change in a second, just like that, but not from something external, from something that happens internally.
Yeah.
So identify, what is the core belief you have that keeps you stuck? Your conditioning, what are those things that you were raised with? So I was raised in England after the Second World War by parents who lived through the Second World War. And one of the biggest things that thank you, Winston Churchill, stiff upper lip, never ask for help. So, but secondly, scarcity. There will never be enough.
Yeah.
So, recognize what are those core beliefs that drive you? Because while they may have been true for the people who instilled those beliefs in you, they are not true now. And until you recognize what that belief is and put your conscious brain on the subconscious belief. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, yeah.
The subconscious belief drives you. But if you can identify that and bring that to the light and apply logic and reasoning to see how that belief isn't true, it frees you. So that's number one. Second thing, for a good number of people, and I would like to bet a lot of the people who are watching this or listening to this, you do not have an accurate opinion of yourself.
True.
Your mind, I know, your mind is full of all of the things that were said to you growing up. Why can't you be more like your brother, right? Why don't you finish your homework? You're so lazy. Why don't you? Years and years and years of this stuff lodges in the subconscious.
Yep.
And we know every experience that we have had. We know everything that's happened to us, and we base our opinion of ourselves on that knowledge. But the thing is, we're the only ones that know that. Nobody else knows that. So your opinion of yourself is actually not true. And so I always say, this is very difficult. It takes courage. But if you can do it, I promise it will change your life within 30 days. Okay, I promise. You have to get a more accurate opinion of yourself. And the way to do that is to go to people that you trust. They don't have to like you, but people you trust and respect, and ask them 3 words you would use to describe me. And you write it down. You take a pen and paper. You say, Simone, I'm working on myself. I would like to understand, when you think about me, what are 3 words you would use to describe me? Or what do you think are my 3 greatest strengths? And then, hardest thing we ever have to do. We don't talk. We listen, and you write those down. You say, Simone, thank you very much. And that's it. Don't argue. Don't justify. Don't minimize. Just write them down. Go to 4 or 5 people. It can be family, co-workers, friends. You could ask strangers, when you meet me, what are 3 words you would use?
Yeah.
The job is, don't argue with them, because you'll see themes arise. You'll see themes that will come out. People will use the same word. Then the job is, every day for 30 days, you choose one of those things. Just one. Because your brain can't handle too much. Okay, we're talking habit. One. And you make a conscious effort throughout the day to look for the proof that that one thing is true. So I remember when I did, when I started to work on myself and try and get better, I was so worthless in my mind that I didn't dare ask for help. So I didn't go to therapy or counseling or anything. I did it all alone. So I had to create these activities for myself. And I remember when I did this, and somebody said, you're very generous. In my mind, I have no money. I'm working at a ladies' clothing store making minimum wage. I have no money. How can I be generous? Right? And I struggled with this. And I went back to the person. I said, I don't understand. And she said, no. You're generous with your time. You're generous with your wisdom. You're generous with your listening. I thought, oh, okay. And then I started to notice where people would come and ask me questions, and I would share advice with them, or I would share with them ideas, or I would help them fix problems. I thought, oh,
I am generous.
I'm generous.
Yeah.
And that little thing The self-esteem went here to here. And then as
Yeah.
I practiced this, by the end of 30 days, I felt a little bit different about myself. And as I felt different about myself inside, guess what happened to the outside?
Changed.
Mm.
And it changed.
As I changed inside, the world changed how it responded to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think is such an important point that you are making here on this show, on this episode, because a lot of I tend to go mainly business and strategies and tactics, but you can have the best business strategies and best business tactics in the world, but if you don't feel confident or good enough to approach a client and mention the price that you want to get paid, or to mention any price at all, or if you don't feel confident or good enough to attract new talent to your business, then guess what? You're not going to change. You're going to be stuck wherever
Exactly.
you are, because the world will respond to the way you, if you're talking about vibrations, in the vibrations that you emanate. If you don't want
Yeah.
to talk about vibration, the world will respond to what you believe inside
Yeah.
yourself, and that it will give you more of that. So do this work is really important. And the other bad news, I don't want to give a lot of bad news in this show, but the other bad news is that it is a freaking ongoing work. Yes.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to mention that, but
Yeah,
since you
it's like,
did, yeah.
you mentioned, like, there is no magic pill, and it's true.
No.
And I'm only 30 years old, so in terms of life experience, I've got more to live than I have lived, and there is a lot more that I got to do, a lot of work that I need to change. Something that I'm really grateful is that I started like studying
Early.
coaching and NLP when I was 21, 22, and so for the past 9, 10 years, I've been like focusing on changing this side of myself, and every time there is a new one, it's like, oh damn it, I just finished the work on the other side, then there is this other thing that is popping up. Really? Just give me a break, please.
So, no. Simone, here's how it goes. Everybody should know this.
Yeah,
So,
let's share,
whatever your
let's be
defects,
honest in it. Let's be
I mean, why be anything else, right? But whatever those defects are, perfectionism, control, right? Self-esteem, whatever, self-esteem, whatever they are, you got like 12 things going on that you're trying to manage, and you've got a lid on 11. And it's like the pop-up thing at the carnival. So you
Yes.
just got control over these 11, and this one pops up, and you're like, oh, let me go over here. And then this one pops up. Yeah, I wish I could tell the audience that I'm great and I'm perfect and all of that stuff. And this is one of the things that concerns me when I speak, because when people look at me and they see me, they cannot put this together with what was back here.
Yeah.
But that's only because, as you said, I have never dropped the work. I've constantly worked to develop myself, and every time the perfectionism comes back up, I'm aware. And when I make a decision, I go, damn, that was people pleasing. I'm aware. So no, by no means have I got this solved, but I tell you what, I'm a lot further along the road thanks to this.
Yeah.
So no, you're right. It's not going to stop.
Thank you. So we are looking for improvements, and
Yes.
we are looking to do the best we can at any given point. And then sometimes things we can't control. That's it. Let it go. Tomorrow is another day. So
Here's the other thing that I've learned,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily a tangible thing, hard to explain other than if we had like the 5 hours to go into quantum physics. But you're right, whatever you put out there is what you will get back. And the one thing I know for sure, when you are on the right path, things will line up and happen. When you struggle, it's because you really need to go and look in the mirror. You're not on the right path. You're fighting for something that you believe in your logical mind is the right thing, when your subconscious mind or the real
So
you
true.
knows that it's a different path. So let go. Stop fighting. Look for the steps, look for the signs, and follow that path. Everyone is born to this life with a purpose. And you know what? Some of us come in and we're a baker. That's what we are. We have an amazing talent to make cakes and pastries and doughs. And you can be wildly happy and successful making cakes and
Yeah.
pastries and doughs. Why would you force yourself to be a pharmacologist if you're a baker? You're never going
Yeah.
to be happy.
Absolutely. So now it's time to go. Now we are wrapping up this part of the
Really?
interview.
Already?
Yeah, gotta wrap up. We're almost there. We're almost there. It's been such a great conversation. So guys, make sure that you take the time to focus on yourself because in as Sue says, less in this case is more. You
Yeah.
need to have the time to also, check in within yourself. Am I on the right track? Am I creating more struggle for myself that I should be? Where am I going? And if you keep your life, and it's, as entrepreneurs, our life can be quite hectic. And I know, but it's about taking these pockets of moments where you're also reflecting on yourself, you're reflecting on the day, the decisions that you have made, and then there you know where you can improve. So I want to now transition to the last part of the interview where we're going to lift the veil. Now we're going to lift the veil. That's the
Okay.
part where I'm going to share ask every guest to share maybe a tool or a book or an app or maybe a practice that they are using or doing that makes a difference in their life. So or business. So what's for you, Susan?
Okay. So the if I had to recommend a book to anybody, I would recommend a book that I credit. There's two books that I credit with saving my life because, I'm a lot older than you are. This is I spent more than half my life in the other doing the other thing.
Hmm.
Uh, John Bradshaw, Homecoming, is a book that I credit John with saving my life. Lucky for me, towards the end of his life, he became a friend and a mentor to me. But Homecoming, and it's about a lot of the things that I talked about the subconscious things, our conditioning, and how it drives
Hmm.
us. And it certainly helped me get to the bottom of a lot of it.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that. Nathaniel Brandon is the other book that I would recommend around self esteem and efficacy and feeling effective as a person. So I still read and watch John Bradshaw's videos on a regular basis. So
Hmm.
he was brilliant.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. So we make sure that these links are going to be in the show notes. So then, guys, you can buy the book and
Yeah.
particulars like keep growing and keep working on yourself. So now it's time to wrap up. Now, Susan, if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you? What do you have for them? What resources can they download?
Sure.
Let us
Well,
know.
easiest way is on Facebook. I have a page called Escape Your Invisible Prison. So, welcome to join the Facebook page, susanarmstrongtraining.com. All of my programs are there. The books are there. So there's two books. There's one book about the story that I told, but
Hmm.
there's another book called Escape Your Invisible Prison with all of the techniques I use to move myself forward. And you can also download 60 minutes worth of free videos on the techniques that I talked about just now on the show with you, Simone.
That's perfect. So the link again is in the show notes. Make sure you connect with Susan on her Facebook page, on her social media, and download the resources that she has prepared for you. So then you can keep growing in this journey. We don't want these interviews to be the end. This is the
Right.
beginning. This is the beginning of a conversation. Now it starts the work. Now
Now
the
starts
real
the
work
work. Yes.
starts. Okay, so
Yes.
let's get started in a perfect way.
That's
And
true.
I cannot recommend someone highly enough as Susan. So make sure you get in touch with her.
Kind. Thank you.
Susan, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. I've
Uh,
enjoyed it, Simone.
You're welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening or watching. If you haven't subscribed yet to the show, subscribe right now. Click the juicy button. It's calling you. Yes, subscribe. And also leave us a review. Let us know what did you enjoy the most about this show. And I've got a cheeky gift for you. If you send me a screenshot with the review, then I'm going to send you a little surprise. Woohoo, lucky you. Now,
Wow.
it's time to wrap up. Thank you very much. And remember that together we grow exponentially. Bye for now.